911, what's the location of the emergency?
My daughter is missing. She's gone. We can't find her anywhere. I've called all her friends.
How old is she?
11.
Okay, what's her name, ma'am?
Carlie.
It was a mild Florida evening in 2004, and young Carlie Brucia was walking the short distance home from her close friend's house. Carlie never made it back that night. A desperate search ensued that ended in tragedy. In the following investigation, a shocking piece of evidence was found in a surveillance clip that caught a true monster committing the most heinous act.
Carlie Jane Brucia was born on March 16, 1992. When she was still an infant, her parents divorced, and Carlie spent her school holidays in Long Island with her father while living with her mother, Susan, in Sarasota, Florida. Carlie had a great relationship with both parents and relished her time spent with her father since he lived so far away. All in all, Carlie was a bright young girl with her whole life ahead of her.
Carlie spent the previous night having a sleepover with a close friend. She spent the day with her before leaving at 6:15 p.m., heading home to watch the Super Bowl with her family. Carlie's walk home was a short distance of just 1 mile. Before Carlie had left, her friend's mom, Connie Arnold, called Susan and asked her if it was okay for Carlie to walk home. Susan expressed that she didn't want her daughter to walk along Bee Ridge Road, as it had a decent amount of traffic along it. Susan ended up sending her husband to pick Carlie up, but he couldn't find her. By 7:30 p.m., Carlie was still not home, which prompted her parents to call 911. The authorities took her case seriously from the get-go, and a large-scale search was launched. The community was deeply shaken by the sudden disappearance of young Carlie, with many mothers fearful that a predator was out there. They weren't wrong. Searchers scoured Carlie's likely route and canvassed the neighborhood for any witnesses who may have seen her. On February 2nd, the day after she was last seen, bloodhounds were brought in to track her scent. They started at Carlie's friend's home and tracked from there. The dogs led their handlers to Evie's car wash at 4735 Bee Ridge Road. From there, Carlie's scent vanished. It turned out the biggest break in the case came from that car wash. Investigators went inside and asked to see any surveillance footage the business had captured from the day previously. Thankfully, the store's CCTV system was working. The following video you see shows Carlie Brucia being led away by her abductor at 6:21 p.m. Rewinding the clip slightly, a yellow Buick was seen pulling into the parking lot 3 minutes before Carlie was seen on camera. An Amber Alert was issued for Carlie, and the surveillance footage was released to the public for help identifying the man with Carlie. It took just days to identify the man. It was local mechanic Joseph Peter Smith. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Joseph Smith was born on March 17, 1966. He moved to Sarasota in 2003, having previously lived in Brooklyn, New York. Smith was a longtime auto mechanic and was married with 3 daughters. His hours spent working on cars left him with a bad back, which developed into a serious pill addiction and drug problem. He had been arrested multiple times on drug-related charges, but also on 3 occasions for assaulting women. Authorities would later discover that Smith had been on parole for drug offenses at the time, despite violating his parole on 2 separate occasions the previous year. For some reason, he was not remanded. When they tracked down his address, police searched the room he rented and found nothing significant that tied him to Carlie, other than the mechanic uniform that matched the one seen in the surveillance footage. When drug paraphernalia was found in his car, officers were able to take Smith into custody on a parole violation. Investigators spoke to Smith's relatives and found his brother John was willing to help them get a confession, stating if Joseph was the one who did this, they weren't going to get him to talk. This rang true, as Smith promptly ended his interrogation by asking for a lawyer.
I was already advised to talk to a lawyer.
But he would speak to his brother.
I can't talk to you. You have requested a lawyer.
What about my family? Why can't I call them? I want to talk to my parents or my brother.
Joseph called John and confessed.
He told me that he strangled her.
John immediately called the investigators to let them know what Joseph had told him. They then headed out to the Central Church of Christ on Proctor Road, 2.8 miles from where Carlie was spotted on the surveillance camera. In an overgrown field behind the church grounds, lying next to a pile of cinder blocks, 11-year-old Carlie Brucia's body was discovered. She was found lying on her back with an angry, deep ligature mark obviously running around her neck. Carlie was undressed from the waist down, apart from a sock on her right foot. During his confession to John, Joseph Smith admitted to sexually assaulting Carlie before strangling her.
He started sending me letters and so forth, and, in his own admission, and, he choked her to death.
The scene was cordoned off and examined for evidence. The police examiner confirmed strangulation was Carlie's cause of death. Forensic analysis confirmed DNA found on Carlie's shirt belonged to Joseph Smith. 2 of Carlie's hairs were also found in the yellow Buick, which it turned out Smith borrowed from a friend, along with multiple fibers from her shirt. The authorities felt they had enough evidence to press forward, and Joseph Smith was charged with Carlie's abduction and murder. The authorities believed Joseph Smith was high when he saw Carlie walking home and acted on his sickest impulse, seeing the opportunity to abduct the young girl in broad daylight. On October 24, 2005, Joseph Smith was found guilty of kidnapping, sexual battery on a child under 12, and first-degree murder. The jury voted in a 10-2 split to recommend the death penalty, which Judge Andrew Owens agreed with, sentencing Smith to death by lethal injection for the murder and life in prison for the kidnapping and assault. Speaking on his decision, Circuit Court Judge Andrew Owens said, "Carlie endured unspeakable trauma, which began at the time of her kidnapping. The image of the defendant taking her arm and leading her away will no doubt forever be etched in our minds." During the sexual and physical abuse Carlie was subjected to at 11 years of age, there is no doubt she was aware of her dire predicament, and that she had little or no hope of survival. Her death was conscienceless and pitiless, calculated and premeditated. On July 8, 2017, the previous death sentence decision was vacated.
11-year-old Carlie Brucia's killer may escape the death penalty after a recent Florida Supreme Court decision.
Defense attorneys say the state is re-examining Smith's sentence because the Florida Supreme Court ruled that death penalty sentences had to be a unanimous decision by a jury. Smith's sentence was not unanimous.
In 2020, a new sentencing hearing was held, but it saw the death penalty be upheld. Joseph Smith died in mid-2021, having spent 16 years on death row. Carlie's father was thrilled to hear the news. He firmly believed Smith is going to rot in hell for what he did.
Susan Shorpen has passed away. Shorpen is the mother of Carlie Brucia, the 11-year-old girl whose murder made national headlines in 2004.
Susan admitted to turning to drugs, saying she felt helpless because the pain within my reality is too much to bear. It is a demon that Susan battled with for the next decade before she lost her life to a heroin overdose in April 2017. A second tragedy stemming from that horrible incident all those years ago. John has been vocal about a possible second murder that his brother may be responsible for.
The eyes, just locked, like no movement, just piercing. It was like Superman rays. And just like very scary, very, very, very scary.
In March 2000, 25-year-old Tara Riley's body was found in a pond behind a Bradenton Walmart. John claims that hours before Tara was killed, she had turned down Joseph's advances. He believes the humiliation made Joseph snap.
Remember, he already had a thing for her, and then to be rejected like that, that had to hurt him.
Sadly, we may never know who was responsible for Tara's murder. Her case is considered cold, but is still on the Bradenton police's radar.